Hello, in this video I'm going to talk about these three evaluating functions activities on Delta Math for this week. So let me just do a couple of example problems. What it means to evaluate functions is to plug in the specified input from the function's domain and evaluate it to get an output, okay, which is actually a number in the function's range. So just as a reminder, the -6 is in the domain because it is an input that you can get in and get an answer. And then whatever the answer is, that is a number in the range of the function, okay? And so really, I just tend to use the calculator. You're just going to be putting in -6 for x here and just super careful because of the negative. So this would be -x minus 4 is the actual function, and then the number in the domain, or the input, is -6. And so the output, which is the number in the range, is 2. Okay, so I just submit the answer 2. Yep. And I'll just do one more. Okay, so here I'm going to be plugging in 0. So I'll just write the function. And you notice that I put the x in parentheses. This is so I know that I'm plugging this in just for x, not for -x. So this is going to be -0 plus 1. And hopefully you can do that in your head. But that is, the answer is 1. Okay, and so all of these work this way. Level 2 is slightly harder. So here you have -7 is the input, or the number in the domain. And I am trying to look for what the number in the range, or the output, is for this. Because there's two x's, the way that this is set up is it's going to be 4x, and I put x in parentheses, squared, minus 4x. Okay, so for both x's, I put in this -7. Okay, and so my answer is 224. So put 224. And 224 is a number in the range of the function because it's an output. Okay, here the number in the domain is -1, so this is your input. And again, it's two places where you have to plug it in. So let me just write the function. So -x squared minus 4x. And then wherever the x is, just where the x is, I put a -1. And for these squares, it's super important that you put your negative in parentheses to square it, because -1 times -1 is +1. And if you didn't put it in parentheses, your calculator would evaluate it as -1. But as you know, the square root of -1 is an error. It's an imaginary number. So you wouldn't be expecting -1 to be in the range, because -1 is something you can't square root, because that's the inverse of that. Anyway, the answer is 3. And then you would submit the answer. The answer is a number in the range. Okay, let me just do the level 3, a couple of problems. Again, same thing, you just need to be careful, and the functions are looking even more crazy than this, all right? But again, we're still evaluating them, which means that we're just trying to figure out what they're equal to. When you put a specific number from the domain into the function. So I typed the function. Again, I put x in parentheses, and that minus goes outside the x. And so my x, the input, is -7. -7, we're told, is an input, so we're assuming that's in the domain. The complicated thing for this one is to the nearest thousandth. So that means 3 decimal places. Okay, so here, right, it's 0.1451, but I have to look past the 1 to make sure, wait, 0.145, yeah, and then the 5 is the third decimal place, but I have to be super careful that, like, the number following the 5 is less than 5, otherwise I'd round it up. But the number following the 5 is 1, so I just terminate it there. If it was 7, I would have to round this up to 0.146. So let's see if that happens in the next problem. All right. And then the last one here that I'm going to do for you guys, again, is a complicated one. I tend to put the fraction in first. And I'm typing out like all the X's. It's not the worst habit to get into because that's how I would want you to do it on your paper anyway. But then I just delete the X's and I put in the input. So the number in the domain that they want me to use. Okay, so this is 2.214, but the 4 is followed by a 2, so I just leave the 4. So this is 2.214. Oh, oh, good, I made a mistake. So let's just try to figure out where that is. Negative 13 minus x squared, yep, negative 13 minus x squared, yep, 4 times negative 7. Oh, because I can't read, man. All right. The nearest tenth is different. So I'm glad that I made the mistake because you probably will too. This is 1 decimal place. Okay. So this would just be 2 point, because the 2 is followed by a 1. I don't round up, so let me just do that. Okay. Reading is fundamental. Hopefully this helps, and you're able to get all the problems you need to get done for the evaluating functions levels 1, 2, and 3.